England versus Argentina. The Allianz Stadium was the final game and a long international season for both of these sides. And I've got to say, each team's game plan, it just looked a little bit weary at times throughout this game. It was a good game overall, but yeah, there was a lot of kicking at times, a lot of tactical play, and occasionally it broke loose and there were some really entertaining phases. Pre-game, England have made a lot of changes from the previous week's win against New Zealand. A lot of injuries, a lot of experience out the side. And then late in the week as well, Fraser Dingwall out, Max Ajomo in for his test debut. And he would go on to have some really, really important involvements and pick up the Player of the Match award too. It was a really cagey start. I said in the pre-game that this was going to be a very tactical approach by England. I thought they wanted to control territory, put pressure on Argentina and give them very few turnover opportunities to release and get going and play the rugby that Argentina loves to play, free flowing, beautiful, attacking rugby. And that was the way it played out. It was very cagey, and England managed to drag Argentina into that, really. Argentina really played quite a tactical game as well to try and counter England's game. The scrum was a real battle and an interesting one all day. It seemed like overall England had the edge, but they weren't getting the benefit of it from the referee. In the very first scrum, Ellis Gaines got himself in an absolutely awful position and somehow managed to get going forward and knock the Argentinian guy backwards. But the referee had deemed that he'd gone across and up, which, it's definitely a case for that. But England were looking dominant in the scrum. Even, like I said, Gaines got himself in a terrible position in that first scrum. England won the second scrum pen shortly after that with Ashiropoko Fajor dominant on the tight head side. And I've got to say, we're used to seeing scrums looking really rock solid, like everybody locked together. The scrums are a bit messy in this game. I'm not quite sure the reason why that was, but yeah, there was a lot of scrums that kind of disintegrated and fell apart a little bit. But the cagey start ended after 8 minutes when England threw a trick line out to Sam Underhill at the front. He went careering off at the pitch with great pace, as he absolutely can. And England flew into some really fluent attacking rugby. There was a huge handoff from Manny Feowaboso on Delgi, which sent him backwards towards his own try line. It was quite something spectacular. And England looked sharp. They looked like they had great running lines, but they couldn't quite break Argentina down enough to get her for a try. But Ford, as he's wont to do, dropped back, knocked over a drop goal for 3-0. Only a minute later, and Max Ajoma was the beneficiary. Again, it came from the tactical game. England kicked high, Argentina up in the air. They could only knock it back down to their side, and then another knock backwards. Ojo was onto it in a flash and over for try on debut, and 10-0 to England after 9 minutes. And at this point, you're thinking, game plan's working, absolutely working. Pressuring Argentina, picking up the scraps, getting drop goals when we need them. This is absolutely perfect. And then when you're playing a game like this, you don't want to let the opposition back into it. You don't want to give them easy entries. And Maritoji gave a silly penalty away from a kick ahead up the pitch. He was loitering somewhere upfield and it wasn't deemed to be retreating fast enough, given a penalty against, and that gave Argentina the chance to get into the game. And Gallo, the loosehead, dropped a try-scoring pass. Now, I'm going to stand up for my fellow loosehead here. This was a difficult chance. Benitez Cruz has managed to just fiddle a ball through between two defenders, and it was high up on his shoulder. But if he'd caught that, he was going to be in for a try without any doubt. George Ford had a mixed day. I think generally he had a good game, but he had a couple of sort of slightly shaky moments, and one of those was when he was charged down in goal from an England scrum, and because England passed the ball back into the in-goal area and the charge down happened inside the in-goal area, that meant it was a 5-metre scrum to the Argentinians. And they won a scrum penalty against Ellis Genge, again penalised. I think this was for hinging down. And Argentina went for the tap, and they used a really clever tactic. Which players do you normally see hitting the ball up on that first go from the tap penalty? It's always one of the front rowers, right? It's typically one of the hookers for most teams. Argentina got their backs in there, which meant that the backs were then taken into forwards, which meant that they then got mismatches of forwards against backs. And it was looking very good for them. But Luke Cowan-Dickey came in and did a brilliant job holding up the Argentinians over the line. During this phase, I've talked a lot about England's kicking game and the way they were playing. but they were caught deep a lot during this period. And Ben Spencer's kicking, particularly long kicking, he was kicking long to touch to get the ball off the pitch. That was clearly a tactic England wanted to get after the Argentinians' line out as well. And his long kicking was really excellent. England caused himself another little problem shortly afterwards when Elliot Daly caught a kick, flung it inside to Freddie Stewart, and I think Stewart probably, if he had his time again, would have probably moved the ball on. He didn't really see that as an option, so took the ball up, and he was so isolated. I can't remember a player in international rugby looking quite so isolated from like a relatively standard set of play. He got turned over. Well, it was a penalty, excuse me, which Carreras hit the post with. Again, England with a good scrum, Genge dominant, and they went left, but the Argentinians had really covered it. In fact, they'd over covered it going that side. So they immediately went back the right hand side to Max Ajomo, who just looked wide, Feo Boso in absolutely acres. And Max Ajomo has played a lot of rugby at fly half. He is multi-skilled, very, very talented and confident as well. He whacked the perfect kick across to Feo Boso. Easy catch, easy running, untouched from 40 metres. It looked kind of strange, but then a lot of the Argentinians were on the floor for the scrum. They probably should have come back and filled in that space, but England just switched back so quickly that probably meant that it was going to happen anyway. 17-0 after 25 minutes. But in the back of minds, you're thinking Argentina were 21-0 down last week and came back to win. Let's just keep on keeping on, shall we? England's kicking game continued, apart from one person, Manifeo Weboso. Every time he caught the ball, he was not interested in taking a mark. He was not interested in kicking the ball back himself. He seemed to have free rein to carry the ball back up and take on defenders every single time. And 30 minutes in, he had 7 carries. And I think all of them would have had plus contact meters at the end of them. Argentina, though, was starting to look dangerous. They hadn't got much going in this game. They hadn't been allowed to in lots of ways. But they broke through the middle and it looked like they were certain to score until George Ford came in, and it looked like a knock on in the tackle, potentially a penalty, but it was actually came off George Ford's head. A lucky break there for England, really. Argentina, really, they looked certain to score there, to be honest. I think they would have scored more times than not. Benitez Cruz, the scrum half, won a brilliant turnover from a Max Ajomo carry from a scrum. And there was a Daly kick chase which led to a penalty, and George Ford missed that kick as well. He did miss a few kicks at goals as well today, George Ford. So like I said, he was good. Not his best game, but he was still decent. There was an offside penalty against Argentina. They kicked, and this was an interesting decision because it was 17-3. So a kick in that penalty would take them more than 2 scores ahead. And they'd done that. They'd gone for the one that Ford missed 2 minutes earlier, but they just felt some energy maybe. And this is sometimes where the nuance of just, this is the moment to go for it. So they went for the corner and it was a good maul, and England powered through. Lucan Dickey did a fine job to get to the line, and it looked a certain try until the replay came up and it was clear that he just lost control of the ball millimeters. This one was so close, but I think it was the correct decision. So no try. Argentina still in touch, really. 17-3 at half time. England had played high percentage rugby, and Argentina, like I say, they'd had a couple of moments, but really hadn't got much going in that first half. Well, they did early in the second half because, again, from a scrum, the scrum was quite a big feature of this game. England were dominant on an Argentina scrum, but Argentina broke away. And sometimes if you get the scrum going forward, it can create a seam in the defence. And it was Picardo, the 12, who I thought was outstanding on the day. Really powerful, really direct. And, Inford Chocobaras, who was also a very good player. So Argentina are looking like they've got a lot of depth in the centres at the moment. He made the initial break, and then several phases later, he was in under the sticks for 17-10. And everything just felt like it was going stagnant for England. They looked like they were low on energy. They were losing area battles all the time. Mario Toji gave another penalty away for not releasing on the floor. That was 17-13. Then the bench came on. Henry Pollock, his first carry, he got whacked really hard, but he fought to stay on his feet. And as Luke Cowan-Dickey came in to support him, Cowan-Dickey kind of just hit Pollock almost in the back of the head. I thought he'd killed him, to be honest, but everybody got up, so that was fine. Elliot Daly, his first start since the Lions, or first game since the Lions, he wasn't having the greatest game. There was a poor kick from him in attack. Henry Pollock was given a penalised for not bowling away in the ruck. 17-16, 20 minutes to go. Argentina back within a point, and everything was going against England at this point. Mitchell was a forward pass from Mitchell as he was hit backwards towards his own line. So this is a really interesting one. We see momentum rule in play with forward passes when players are going towards the opposition goal line. But this was I don't think this was forwards out the hand. But because he got hit backwards towards his own goal line and he was running that way anyway, it really looked like it. And to be honest, it's very difficult to judge. There's no criticism of the referee here at all. On first viewing, it did look like it might have been forward. But when you really analyse it, I think it was backwards out of the hands. Anyway, England won a scrum penalty shortly after that. Like I say, the scrum was a huge part of this game, and they got through a bit of decent play for the first point in this half, but George Ford missed a drop goal attempt. Freddie Stewart was carrying really well. He looked lively from 15 on the day. George Ford put Alex Coles on a beautiful inside ball. He'd recognised that some of these Argentinians were really trying to target him and get stuck into him. And of course, that leaves space either side. Alex Coles was onto it. And Ford actually did a really good job at this ruck because England were very thin. He got himself in there, drew a penalty, which England kicked to the corner, drove from the line out, got a penalty advantage, and then Ford, Jomo and Slade just ran at holes. They just ran straight towards the line, tried to take on the Argentina defence. Ford slipped it to a Jomo. He got on an outside shoulder, single tackle, and a beautiful kind of, little flicky offload. Just lifted it up in the air to Slade, who caught it and fell over the line for 27-16. Henry Pollock, Argentina probably had the ball for the majority of the time in this last 20 minutes. And Pollock was really busy on defence. He made a lot of tackles. He won a turnover penalty. He did fall off a few tackles as well, must be said. I haven't seen the stats, but he definitely missed a couple too. A Ford penalty after that made it 27-16. It was 24-16 before. And that kind of felt like not game done, not by any means, but with 8 minutes to go, 11 points up, you should be able to manage that. Most teams would feel like they can manage a game out from that position against most teams, but this isn't most teams. This Argentina team have got fire and passion and skill, and they come from deep and they come in waves and they get over the top of you, and they kept coming, Argentina, and it was outstanding work. Big moment, 75th minute, Argentina used all their subs just on the 22, the Argentina 22, Juan Cruz Malia steps up to kick a long, beautiful kick this one was, but Tom Curry came in and it was a late tackle. Nothing else illegal about the tackle. Everything else was legal, but it was late. Malia very sadly has got injured in the result of that tackle, and it's an ACL. It might be out for 9 months. Early reports are saying. Incredibly unfortunate about the injury. You see tackles like this in the game all the time. This is not unique. There was nothing vicious or bad about it, but it was late. It was a penalty. There's more to come with this afterwards, and we'll get onto that after I finish off this game. But that's my take on the incident. It's a late tackle, and that's all it was. I think actually Curry looked at it and almost felt like he had to pull out a little bit, but was his momentum. He was going fast. Don't forget, a lot of the replays you'll see are in slow motion. He was moving fast into that tackle. And if you want to understand why flankers or people running towards people kicking the ball is really important, and they have to stay focused and they have to stay on task, you only have to see the British Lions game against Argentina earlier this year, when Argentina went the length from a very similar position. It was Tom Curry who was going for the charge down, and Henry Pollock, who had slipped, just kind of eased off a little bit on the inside. Argentina took the break and went the length. That's why people have to stay on, and that's why you do see sometimes late tackles in these situations, because they have to stay alive for the dummy. Okay, that being said, Argentina down to 14, but still absolutely going for this game. And Oviedo drove over for a try with 2 minutes to go, and it was like, oh my goodness me, this is now game on. Alex Coles was yellow carded at the same time, but the referee, again, TMO, the tiniest lack of control as he was going over the line. It was a very close run thing, but very similar to Luke Cowan-Dickey's one, correctly given, not try. And it felt then that maybe England have not got away with it, but had sinned through this last phase of prey. But Rodrigo Isgro got over with for like 15 seconds to go. They got back, drop kicked the conversion for 27-23, which meant the game would restart. And that's all Argentina needed. They just needed one restart, one opportunity to keep playing. And they kept the ball alive for a long, long time. They were in deep for a lot of the time. England being relatively passive in defence, just hoping for an error, certainly not committing to breakdowns at all. But eventually, Carreras found a hole. He got the break. It was a penalty at the breakdown, kick to the corner, but Argentina lost the line out. England clear. That was the game over. That was a very, very nervy last 6, 7, 8 minutes of this game. England got there. They looked tired at times, I thought, in this game. I thought they played a very relatively conservative game plan, and they never quite got enough breaks in the game to really play a lot of attacking rugby. There was only that phase very early and a couple of points in the second half, but they did enough to win. And this is a very good Argentina team at the end of a long season, so there's huge credit in that. What there's no credit is in the unpleasant things that happened after the game. For me, the rugby happens on the pitch. If something bad has happened, then it gets dealt with afterwards by the authorities, by the citing commissioner, and all of that. Trying to get after a player because you feel like he's done something bad against your mate after the final whistle, for me, is not part of the game, whether you're a player, whether you're a coach, or whatever. So I just think all of that should have been avoided. All of that should have been dealt with in a professional way. And we shouldn't be having this discourse that's going on about the character of Tom Curry at the moment. That's my take on it. Okay. Well, let me know what you think. Let me know what you think about the game. Let me know whether you think Argentina were maybe unlucky in some ways and could have won. They definitely could have won. There's no question about that. What did you think was good about England's performance? Let me know in the comments down below, and I'll join you there for a very friendly conversation, as we always do here on the Amateur Rugby Podcast. And give the video a thumbs up while you're down there if you don't mind. It helps other rugby fans just like you find it. And you can subscribe there. You can watch that one next. And don't forget to get out and play.